Okay, פרק יטס. ומעט יש להבן בשורש ארץ הספירוס נצולבים ששורש של מבחינת מלכות דאק. כמו שמבוא בעת חיים בשאר הכללים, מבחינת מלכות דאק, נעשה כסד עתיק ימן. והנה תחילה יש להקדם בעניין ארץ הספירוס הגנוז בהלם, איך שיעצם לגילוי. זה מה שנאמר קרא דרס מרויש דאק חולו. ואמר בספר יצירה שזהו כשלהבס הקשור בגחלת. וכהי גבנה יש דמיינס רבים. ויובן יויסר מיעוט כוחס הנפש. והנה ידוע עניין הלם וגילוי. אינו כתפשטוס כוח מן העצם, כמו כוח המפויר.
Okay, go ahead.
שיצא מהלם עצם הרוצם שמצד עצמי כנ"ל. כך בחינס כסורם דאס ספירוס אצילוס הן רק בחינס גילוי רוצם לגבי הלם עצם הרוצם שנקרא רוצם לרוצם.
Right.
שהוא בבחינס אק. So here he calls אק בעצם הרוצם. כנ"ל. וכמו מבחינס הלם הרוצם לחסד האק, נמשך גילוי רוצם לחסד האצילוס. Like from his self-image of being an Ish Chesed, that's Adam Kadmon, means the first conception of himself as what kind of person he's going to be. From the Chesed of that will come a Gilui Rotzen for Chesed in actual coming out of a particular Chesed. Shenikra Chesed the Chesed. So the source of Chesed the Chesed is in Chesed of Ak. We can mevchinat helam ros in the Chochma Chulu. Akma shemuven mamash anal shezeu anikra his havus rotzen lerotzen. Array shezeu anikra his havus rotzen lerotzen. This thing which is called his havus rotzen lerotzen. Array huba b'pchinas haklal. It comes in a general fashion. It's a hesken klali. Lohelet kama mine rotzen v'kama inyanim v'evnim shaynim. All kind of different ways in the pratim. Tach m'pinat rotzen l'rotzen l'chesed ba'ak. Lohelet kama mine gili rotzen l'chesed ba'atzilus. V'inyan, so that's in general. Now he's going to tell you in more particular. V'inyan hu de m'pinas ha'malchus shel mida da'ak nasa m'pinas kesed de mida da'atzilus. That's in particular. Ubichlalos ha'esesphiras, hari rag mempinas malchus da'ak nasa kesed atzilus. So, vahu, that means, in other words, from malchus of chesed of ak becomes keser of chesed of atzilus.
Right.
But really only from Malchus of Ak becomes Keser of Atik. Means Atik of Atzilus.
Right.
So how does that work? So because everything really goes through Malchus. In other words, from Malchus of Chesed of Ak becomes Chesed of Malchus of Ak.
Right.
You know how that works. That's later on in the Nesira.
Right.
The Malchus of a Sphira becomes that Sphira of the Malchus.
Right.
And then the Malchus of Ak becomes Keser of Atzilus. So it means that Chesed of Malchus of Ak becomes Chesed of Keser of Atzilus.
Right.
And Chesed of Keser of Atzilus becomes Keser of Chesed of Atzilus.
Right.
So it means that from Malchus of Chesed of Ak becomes Keser of Chesed of Atzilus.
Right.
And there's all kinds of more and more particular ways that you can figure this out. But in general, you can say directly that from malchus of a malchus of a midah of Ak becomes the keser of that midah of Atzilus.
Right.
Even though in general, for malchus of Ak becomes keser of Atzilus. What does it mean? V'hu rak mebchinas oisius v'gilui etzem helam harotzen nasa or ha'etzem shel gilui rotzen. And he's going to explain this in the parentheses. And this explanation in the parentheses is not only on this, but in general on all the inyan of how from the malchus of the upper becomes keser of the lower.
I need to flip the tape. Hold on. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so this next little thing here is very important because it doesn't only apply to this chapter, but it applies to everywhere. Not the first one, but not the first parenthesis, but the second parenthesis. Shehuk Moshe Mavur Ba'ois Yitchet, the Rak Mibchinat Soif Maisa, the Etzem HaRotzen, Nase Rotzen LaRotzen. Now you notice over here, he doesn't call Rotzen LaRotzen. Before he was calling the Rotzen LaRotzen, it was the Etzem HaRotzen. Now when he says Etzem HaRotzen, that means the Rotzen HaKodom.
Right.
The Pinat Soif Maisa of the Rotzen HaKodom comes out the Keser of the Rotzen LaRotzen, Shues Spheres Da'ak. And now is a dogma in general, and it's not just for this chapter, of how from the malchus of the upper becomes the crown of the lower in general, and also how from the malchus of the midah of the upper becomes the keser of the midah of the lower.
Right.
And this is also, it's not just in this inyan here, but everywhere. In other words, that from the malchus of chesed of Atzilus comes out keser of chesed of Bria.
Right.
And aderech dogma, migilui rotzen shebedibur hamashpia, nase etzem harotzen lamekabel. Means from the malchus of Keser becomes Keser of Keser in the Makabel, in the lower level. What does it mean? Megilui Rotzen should be Dibur HaMashpia. Like for instance, when the Rebbe says something and he reveals in his speech, which is his Malchus, that he wants the Hasidim to do such and such a thing, like let's say take over the world. This becomes Nasa the Etzem Harotzim by the Makabel. Right?
Right.
So that's like Keser. Kamei, and also Shema'oisi is Gilui HaSechel Shebedibur Shebamashpia, Nasa Etzem Or HaSechel B'Makabel, like what we're doing right here. From the letters of revelation of the Sechel in the writing, instead of Dibur you can say writing of the Mashpia of the Rebbe, this book. Nase Etzem Or HaSechel B'Makabel. By us, this becomes the Etzem Or HaSechel.
Right.
These letters that by the Rebbe is the end of the letters, means the Malchus of Malchus from the Rebbe. This by us becomes the actual Keser of our Seichel, the Etzem Or HaSechel.
Right.
In the Makabel. The Kach Rak Me'esis V'Gilui Chesed Shebedibur the Mashpia. Like, for instance, if the Rebbe says you should go out and help Jews, like put tefillin with people and help them and makar with people, Nasa, this becomes Eir HaRotzen L'Chesed L'Makabel by the Chassidus. And this you can see in any midah. Hiyadua. B'kol ila ve'ilu, shembchina achreina shba'ila nasa roish v'shorish la'ilu. B'kach mebchinas malchus da'ak, Bichlal, and same thing is in particular, same thing in general. Naz Prinas Chassid. The general talk of the Rebbe becomes the general Keser of the Chassid. Cool. The Hainu Meprinat Gilu Rotzen LaRotzen should be Dibur Belvad, means just the final Dibur, so to speak, of the Rotzen LaRotzen. Naz Prinas Mocker Kol Gilu Rotzen Shemitzad Tainuk Shnikra Chassid Atik. Like will be explained later. And this little parenthesis is a very big thing that explains on all the levels.
Right.
The Hainu Klalus, and this, what we talked about in this chapter, this is the general inyan of Eser Spheres Atzilus, of the 10 spheres of Atzilus. Shiyatzu Mehelam Eser Spheres Da'ak, that they just came out from the Helam of the Eser Spheres Da'ak in a way of just a Gilut. Mashanemar Kari Adarish Merois, that he calls out the generations from the head of Ak. That's chapter
19.
Which now I have to finish this off.